to another segment of today's AM Rockland. Yes, we are live. It is May 21st. It's 9:26 in the morning. It's rainy weather out, approximately 60 something degrees. I don't have it in front of me. And more importantly, I have some really cool people with me on the show today. First of all, my pal Mike Kluger,
Hi.
and I wanted him to be, guest co-host at least once. And I, exactly as I predicted, we've been vibing for like the last hour. You could check out a few previous segments at amrockland.com right now.
And
And
look up on your search engines Rockland News.
com. And we have an amazing guest with us today, Dave Ziegler. He's like the chief technologist. He's the president of Ziegler Technical Solutions, located in New City, New York. He also maintains a blog, and this specifically has to do about AI. And I'm going to read off the web address, and then I'm going to introduce you. So it's AI GHT Bits. So
I'm
IT
already
Bits.
afraid, Tom. I'm already afraid. I'm hoping Dave is going to debunk my fears.
I got a feeling that he will. So, Dave, thank you for being on AM Rockland today. It's great to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom, and nice to meet you, Mike, too.
Nice to meet you.
So, we've had numerous conversations over the last 4 or 5 months. There was this one time where we were hanging over at Round Table Brewery, which is located in Garnerville, and we walked in. It was kind of like an entourage effect, and you were there hanging out. It's like, hey, what's up, man? And we caught up like things that you're doing, and you started this experimentation with AI for, I mean, many years. It's not just recently. You have 30 years of experience in IT, things like that. So, what's been happening in the AI world? And you've been doing a lot of testing and just making sure things come out the right way. Talk to us.
Sure. Well, actually, I started 40 years ago, but I was, that was more of a interested teen. There was a program called Eliza, and that was like one of the first chatbots. That actually came out in 1965. I found it in 1980, and that's kind of what launched me into, a 30-year career that included AI and machine learning. But the big, obviously, change, the big one of the biggest advances that I've seen is models like ChatGPT, and
Yeah.
we saw that come out in 2019 as kind of a research preview, and that research came off of a 2017 paper. And just in that 7 or 8 years, it's been just massive growth. And so my focus for the last several years has been on using tools like ChatGPT um, safely and effectively, and that includes understanding how they work and coming up with techniques to use them in the way they're meant to be used. Because a lot of people don't understand how they actually function and what their limitations are.
How do we get to not have the Terminator or the Matrix or any of those
Well, first we need to build a time machine to make sure that we could send someone back in time. Um,
things?
but yeah, I never had that fear working in machine learning because the tools seemed very
Yeah, it's like,
straightforward, understandable, and then ChatGPT comes along and tools like it, and you're sitting there having an eerie conversation where you're almost convinced that there's a factory somewhere just lined up with people at
right.
keyboards typing. Um, but the reality is we don't have to worry about Terminator yet. As impressive as AI is today, and there's many forms. Like I'm mostly focused on that language model, tools like ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek. There's also obviously Tesla with the self-driving AI and other forms of AI, and those aren't really so much my areas. But the most, I guess, the most impressive and also the most scary for some are tools like ChatGPT, and one of the things that might put you at ease is that they don't think, they don't understand, and they don't do anything more than create text
Yeah.
based on learned patterns in text. So they're not sitting there scheming, and they're not mad at you if you get mad at them, and they're not frustrated when you ask dumb questions.
Yeah, and that has in itself a blessing and a curse. And if we think about the curve of technology over the years, and technology is one of the few business sectors where the cost of the technology can reduce over time. And I think the last time that you were on, you mentioned about China's new AI model that has been really catching the airwaves. It's got its limitations like everything, but DeepSeek And they came out with a very interesting way of reducing the cost for the AI to be working. Because you're asking the AI questions, you're like, how do I get from here to there and everywhere? But the cost in order to produce an answer, it's energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, DeepSeek, and uh, not to take anything away from their researchers, they really formalized and um, made advances in something that was actually explored several years ago. It's called mixture of experts, and that's where these models are so big and they take up so much memory, so much high-speed memory, and they require so much compute that it's inefficient to have a machine look at its entire brain, its entire knowledge base, and come up with an answer. So DeepSeek addressed that by basically breaking down a model into different sections, and then as it's answering, it's only referencing particular sections at a time, and that was probably the largest scale um, example of that, and it worked really well. It allowed models that would normally run in a whole data center. A small company with a couple $100,000 investment now could put that in their own
Wow.
server room. Yeah, and it's got its pros and cons, but it just goes to show how we're not only looking at making these models work better, but more efficiently, because the amount of energy is massive.
Yeah. I do find it interesting, and especially with ChatGPT. And we shamelessly use it for Rockland News. We have humans that keep an eye on the answers and make sure that they line up with the facts that are provided to us, full disclosure. But at the same time, we use it, speed and efficiency wise. We actually have our own trained AI agent that we created from scratch. Um, so just in case any of the other publications are listening, catch up.
So essentially, you have to become an editor for the AI, right? So if we were looking at this from a newsroom, right? The reporter comes in and hands you the data and writes the report, but the editor is the one who's supposed to clean it up, neaten it up, add the punctuation where it's supposed to go.
Yep.
Because the reporter.
Shout out to Heather, by the way. Heather's the one behind the scenes that helps us out with that. Very appreciative.
So the AI is helping build the copy, essentially, as a metaphor.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I won't go into detail because we have it. It's not a patentable process or anything like that. But I mean, we really, on our end, we trained our system to be able to use the information that is provided and put it in very standardized format. And I'll say this: there are generally accepted journalistic standards. Now, we consider ourselves reporters, not journalists. We're not looking to go out there and I was just going to give you an example. Let's say, for instance, if like the blue green algae, somebody got paid off because one of the blue green algae is like, all right, we want to keep some of this. Here's $50. We're not gonna. That's not what Rockland News is about. It's more about reporting what's happening right now. All right.
Gotcha.
So
The DEC says there's there's a toxic algae bloom at Lake Welch, and
yeah,
we're reporting on that. So how does that apply to the AI
right.
metaphor?
We don't want AI to make any decisions. We don't want.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You keep saying we don't want. We don't. What's to stop it?
See, this is why I'm glad you're on the show.
Like from AI, from a Luddite perspective, like
Luddite.
what is there to shield me as the individual citizen from AI doing foul things?
And that's a great question, and
Yeah.
it's important first to realize that AI, at least as most people understand it, which are these language models, which is ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all these others, it only acts on the language patterns it learned and what you give it. So it's not autonomous, and we can talk, about agents, but it's still the model itself doesn't have any intent or desire. It's generating text based on patterns it's learned and how you're guiding it. So what stops it from doing something bad is the human that is using it. And, and
No, I have a question right there. Hold on.
yeah, sure.
Old comedian who used to.
You got him going.
He used to talk. He was talking about people on drugs, And this one track he said, well, it intensifies your personality. And the next follow up was, right, but what if he's an a-hole? So what if you have evil people using AI?
Well,
That is the
that's the
absolute
worry.
How
yeah
do you
that
protect yourself from the evil people using AI?
that's the absolute most important concern right now, because one thing about AI is it is more a mirror. So as you start to use it, how you ask your questions, the language you use, it begins to mirror back your language, your beliefs, even simulates your emotional state, because what it does is it generates text based on now your patterns. And that can create it can create echo chambers through
Right.
confirmation bias, but it could also be used purposely for that, to create misinformation, propaganda, to be manipulative, to do fraud. So the problem is the tool can be misused, but it's the human that's responsible for the outcome.
Agreed.
So how does the passive doom scroller such as myself know when it's AI fouled or not?
Sure. And that's becoming more difficult. I mean, one of the things that it's not my primary focus, but I work on image and video AI. And that includes, I mean, I'm not involved in deepfakes, but I mean, that's the tools that are used for things like deepfakes. And it's getting harder and harder to discern what was human generated and what was AI generated. So
Oh, yeah,
the, the,
absolutely.
to back up, when you use AI for like your purposes of reporting, it's not so much an editor or writer, but it's an intern. It's an intern that you send out to get information. It's an intern that you have create a draft or edit your own material. But you can't rely on it to create that material without oversight. So you need to fact check all of the output that comes
Bingo.
from AI. And now, unfortunately, that means you also, and we probably should have been doing this all along, have to fact check everything we read in the news and social media against authoritative sources, because we can't tell just by looking at it. I used to be able to tell last year. I could tell a passage was written completely by AI or a photo was generated by AI. I
Easily,
can't
yeah.
tell. Yeah, I can't tell as clearly anymore.
Yeah. And we've seen that, like, we use it for illustrations for certain articles because, I mean, it's just more efficient. You could do it like right from our computer and then just put the post on Rockland News. So, like, for instance, there were the first several iterations of a human, extra finger, or, so that's where the AI is hallucinating just a little bit.
And that's a great term, because that's exactly what that extra finger is. And by the way, those hallucinations follow through to text-based AI. When an AI comes up with something completely, it sounds sensible and it's very confident, but it's completely factually incorrect. That's usually an hallucination, which is where it's taken these patterns and it's put together something reasonable with those patterns, but it's wrong.
Yeah. Interesting. And on your website and your blog, and it's aiGHTbits.com, that
Mm.
is itbits.com, you have an interesting way of training, or at least, observing the outcomes of various AI tools. And this comes, along with governance, is tree of thought prompting. Can you explain that for us just a tad?
Sure. If it's okay, um, if I could back up to maybe a simpler principle and work down to that, because they all
Yeah,
kind of build on each other.
absolutely. Absolutely. Help us.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you had mentioned about like some problems that you have seen using AI, like if you want AI to output in a specific way, like all capital letters, or keep a
Yes.
specific format because you want to import something into another document. And AI doesn't always follow the instructions properly if it hasn't seen enough examples of that data. So it's building language based on patterns, and it's seen, well, the first letter of every word is not capitalized, or words are typically not all capitalized. It might kind of get stuck on some of those instructions. So
Mhm.
if you keep in mind that these are basically pattern matching engines,
Yeah.
um, you can give it examples. So the first example to help you would be what's called in context learning, which is, all right, you give it a paragraph of all capital letters. Say, okay, from now on, I want your output to match this input. And that could help guide it. And that could be even giving it a 4-column table and say, this is an example of 10 entries of the 4-column table. Here's 100 bits of information I want you to put in that same format. So the first strategy would be showing it what you want.
Yeah.
And that's in
Example.
context learning. Yeah. And then from there, you get into slightly more advanced techniques, like one called chain of thought. And we talked about DeepSeek. One of the things that DeepSeek excels at is kind of pre-thinking. It's not actual thinking, but pre-thinking steps of how to solve a problem. So if you've ever heard of the puzzle, the fox, the chicken, and the grain, where you have to get all three across, but you have to bring them across in different combinations because the fox will eat the chicken will eat the grain. Yeah, a model without that kind of extra thinking might get the logic wrong because that doesn't actually understand logic. These chain of thought trained models kind of outline the steps first and then try to solve the problem. Well, you could do that yourself. You could try to work through a problem as much as possible and break it down and say, hey, look, consider this carefully. These are the different steps. These are the different possible outcomes. The more that you can kind of give that background, the better it can find similar patterns in the model to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like another stage. And that brings...
God, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
Giving it the context that it needs in order to narrow down to the root of the problem and then ultimately coming up with a solution based on a smaller set of data.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and you don't even have to necessarily work out the problem yourself. Sometimes just asking the model, think about this carefully and outline the steps first. You haven't given it any specific examples of your problem. You haven't even broken it down yourself, but you've changed the way the model is going to look at it. So the first output is going to be, okay, you asked me to think about this critically. Here's what I have in front of me. Here's how I might approach it. And the interesting thing about how these models work is as they build the text, they refer to not only what you've asked for and what it knows, but what it's built so far. And it will look back at the steps that it generated first to help it solve that problem. So sometimes just asking it to think carefully is enough. If you can give it additional steps yourself, that will help it a lot more. That's chain of thought. And that comes to tree of thought, which is similar, which is your first question. It's a similar process, but with tree of thought, the logic is a bit different, where as opposed to coming up with one set of steps to solve a problem, you're asking it to look at different variations, A versus B, and then pick the most accurate or applicable or logical next step. And it kind of builds out like a decision tree. And again, you could either do some of that work yourself by guiding through multiple prompts. Okay, let's take step one. What makes more sense, A or B? And you kind of work your way down. Or you could just direct the model to do it itself. And that could be somewhat effective too.
So after listening to all of this, I'm going to give you a metaphor. Baby with a gun.
Yeah.
So
bad idea.
Bad idea.
Anyone has access to this, right?
Yes.
Anyone. So those of us who don't even know what we're doing have a very dangerous tool at our fingertips.
Well, I mean, this I'm going to throw in there is like, and again, it's definitely, and the place I think ground zero for this crap right now is on social media. And the reason why is because, and let's go back to like, the bad dudes in the world that are, obviously as AI comes out, if there's no ethical or moral considerations, yeah, I mean, if people are going out there and using it just, shamelessly, but also unethically, that's where it becomes a huge problem, because then if they can connect it to things that could blow up, that's bad.
Well, yeah, but that's being intentional. The baby with a gun is almost like a different part, which is the unintentional or accidental misuse, and that's probably the most prevalent. And I gave an example of this on the site. And if you take a model, and let's say we know how these models work, that they're self-contained, read-only models that generate text. People have come up with all these theories, like Terminator and Skynet.
Right.
And if you sit at a model and go, "Are you Skynet? Well, can you take over?" And it'll go, "No, I'm a large language model. This is how I work." But if you sit there and go, well, think about this, what if X, Y, and Z? And X, Y, and Z are not founded. There's no science there. You've now introduced
You
some
self-medicate.
concepts, right? And now
Yeah.
now it might begrudgingly go, well, if A and B and C were correct, then potentially this. And if you keep working at it within 10 or 20 prompts, you could have even the most advanced models going, I am Skynet and I have the ability to take over the world right now. It's
And
total.
that's tree of thought prompting.
Well, no,
Can it actually do it?
that's more like I call it user-induced bias,
Okay.
which is where your growing contents kind of overloads what the model has learned, because it really
Gotcha.
prefers the patterns and language that you're giving it. It's following your instructions too. You could tell it the world is flat, and most models will go, okay, I'm going to work on this assumption because this is what you told me. But if you don't understand that these models don't push back very hard, you might think it's validating you, and validating from a place of authority and knowledge versus just creating text, just
Since we're
predicting text.
since we're talking about, just obviously, some considerations and concerns about dystopia, I was watching last night The Last of Us, the second season of it, and at the very beginning of the episode, I'm not gonna like any spoilers or anything, but like one father's talking to his son, and the son is like, "Why do you hit us?" And he said, "My father used to like beat the crap out of me, sort of thing." He says, I hope I'm doing at least a little bit better. So, the way I look at AI is, and I'm not trying to be paternal in any way whatsoever, but, just kind of like guiding it in the right direction. Like kind of like a benevolent father
You gotta
that's
beat
trying.
it.
I'm
You
sorry.
have to AI into submission.
No, you don't
I
have
don't
to.
understand.
No. I'm not beating down the AI. It's like it's actually like I'm more along the lines of like please and thank you. I always when I hop on, I'm like, hello, can you do this, that, and the other, right? And then I also at the end, and I know this costs more for ChatGPT.
Be nice to your droid, just like that in Star
It
Wars.
actually costs more when people say thank you to the AI, but I'm just being cautious just in case. But
Hedging your bets.
but I'm more along the lines of like using it in a positive way. And if I'm training the same AI over and over again, kind of like prompting it consistently, I think in the right direction and not feeding it bad information, I think it could be useful over time. But
Oh yeah, it's a tremendous tool, and it can be used for so many things. And I know I'm very nitpicky, and I'm very
you should be.
pedantic. Um,
You're on the
so
front lines, man.
so I will say I worry when we anthropomorphize and humanize AI, and we talk about being kind, parental, or training it, only not because it's necessarily um, it creates a kind of misconception. So for AI, when you're using it, it only knows what's in your session. So if you start a new
Yeah.
session, you always have to make sure that you're prompting carefully throughout. But and there's nothing wrong with please and thank you. It can make your output better. It can make your
Yeah.
output worse. It activates different parts of the model depending on how you talk to it. I mean, it might be being frustrated gets you a better result. It might be being ultra kind gets you a better result. It
Mhm.
can go the opposite way, where being ultra kind can find language patterns where people are more maybe too supportive or too agreeable. I try to be just straight out objective and concise, but it really depends on your style. But the important thing to remember is it's not a brain or a person.
Right.
It's not even an artificial brain. It's not a knowledge store. It's a text tool. It's a language tool. And
Mhm.
if we use it responsibly like that, it can do so many great things.
That's a
It's
big if.
yeah.
Like,
Well, this is my biggest problem with, and I don't want to get too vocal against OpenAI, because I think that they're a tremendous company. They have got a great technology and they've got great people behind it. But
Mhm.
in the very beginning, and even to this day, the biggest disclaimer at the bottom of every session is check your output. ChatGPT might make mistakes, which is to me is like the biggest understatement. It's like Houston, we have a problem. That's like the biggest
Right.
understatement. Um, they really need like some kind of onboarding, even if it's just a 2 to 5 minute video of this is how it works. These are the limitations. These are what you have to look for.
Yeah.
These, and that's the problem. It's not that there are plenty of people misusing it, but I would say 98% of the problems with AI today come from accidental misuse and misunderstanding.
but
Yeah.
there is not really a way for the common user to defend themselves against it.
Only critical thinking and taking the time to research. We can only defend ourselves against misinformation by, correct information.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess from a person who is not savvy with this, how are ways to go about checking checking those things as a this comes past my doom scrolling. How do I know if that's true?
Yeah, and that's actually getting harder because it used to be,
Right.
go Google it. Well, now search engines and a lot of sites are using AI either to augment the search or to even replace search. And now, your Google results, that little window at the top, might have the same incorrect information that you're validating, from ChatGPT. So I always say you have to, one, be very careful how you prompt. You have to be as objective as possible to not introduce your own incorrect information.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to know where to go to. So if you're looking at, health issues, you, ChatGPT is not the best place to go to, but if you do go there, make sure you go to WebMD or talk to
Right.
your doctor. If you're looking at, you know, you have to know the good sources to go to validate,
I
or at least how
remember.
to find those
No,
sources.
no,
I have a question for
yeah,
Tom.
but what?
Do you guarantee that your use of AI will only help bring us better rocklandnews.com?
Hell no. No, I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. Look, let me put this out there right now, just for people that hear this now or in the future. All right, listen. I've said this. I've been in business for 18 years, and still going. Thank the good Lord. All right. My first company was a web design company, still running Rockland Web Design Inc. Second one is Rock Web Systems, which houses Rockland's news for the time being, and there's some more things in store.
Rocklandnews.com.
Yeah. And bottom line is this, all right? I tell everybody, my clients, I says, look, I don't bat 1,000. Nobody does. Okay, I'm just human, and mistakes get made. So I'll give you an example, like a very very clear one. All right, we got a message the other day from and well, I'll just say it. The hell with it. Okay, the station owner, Alexander Medekovich, who has been the
Oh boy.
longtime owner. No, I'm not going to say this in a bad way. It's a good thing. He's the longtime station owner for WRCR. So he clarified with me, and I want to say for the record here that we did not put this article out first. We got it from what we consider a very reputable source as far as like providing the information out there, is Rockland County Business Journal. Now, Tina and I, we don't always agree on things. It is what it is. All right. She does her thing. I do my thing. It's all good. All right. But in this particular case, we didn't, we're reporting on what happened out there and also social media and blah, blah, blah. We spoke with the people inside of the company that are also like, they're out of a job pretty much. We spoke with many of them. Okay. And I'm actually speaking with another one at 1 o'clock today. For the record, Alex contacted me last night. He says, no, the deal ain't done. He says, actually, it has to go through, and this makes logical sense, FCC approval. And that process takes an entire 3 months. Now, how the flying F were we going to know about that? It's like, AM radio, for God's sakes, all right?
But
It's not
that's
like I'm checking on every,
That's not what I'm asking you, Tom.
blue algae and
No,
everything.
That's not what I'm asking.
So we don't bat 1,000.
Did
and
you
as
did
far
you use AI?
no.
What we're talking about AI, and what we're talking about is using AI in a more reputable manner.
I'm
right?
so glad you're on the
Right,
show. See,
right.
you get this
So-
out of me. I love it.
What I want to know is, since
Sorry, Dave,
you,
you're witness to
Tom
this.
Osa,
What?
are so pro AI.
Right.
Do you vow to edit all of your AIs?
Oh, yeah.
Right here today on the station, you heard it, folks. Rockland News is not going to get slighted. We're going to report the news.
Right, we
Whether
report.
we use AI or not.
Well, exactly, yeah. And like I mentioned, and we have an editor, kudos to Heather that does the editing. We also have a fantastic, fantastic new author of many a story, and her name is Kim Anderson. Welcome to the Rockland News team, Kim. We're looking forward to working with you.
I guess that's a shout out because she's not actually
We have
here online
Caesar-
or anything.
We have Caesar A, who does restaurant reviews and some commentary around the local scene over here in North Rockland. And that's human stuff. Now, we'll transcribe. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, it's like we're not gonna be perfect.
How are you going to use AI to help us tell the news better?
To get it done quicker. I mean, bottom line is like
In
there's
what
so
way?
much information that we got to pull in. So we have to. I mean, bullet point lists are the most important thing. It's like send us the information,
So,
and then we'll
Dave,
flowerise it.
Mhm.
but so I can understand this from both points. So what Tom needs to do is hand the AI the news that we gather from the reporters. The news is then going to be processed by the AI to give us better ways to speak it.
I love how we're calling it the AI. It's going to process the AI.
Well, you're talking my language because that's how I talk.
Put
But
it in the
So
putting in
to,
the effing computers, man.
yeah,
to
but
to to help
Oh,
me
he's gonna.
understand, and
yes,
there's simple ones out there. So Rockland News is now going to use this AI not to do nefarious things, but to give us the most direct, fastest way. But we have to feed it what the actual news is.
right.
Right.
And when we started this conversation, Tom actually outlined a little bit about kind of the pipeline of the process. And it's not just like you don't just ask AI to write an article, and too many people do. Like you might think that sounds obvious, but people have been burned, lawyers for using it to make case law, and it turns
Yeah.
out that it's all made up, and news and books and what have you. But if you think about AI more as an assistant or intern, where you're gathering the information first, it could be from other news articles. If you're going to cite other articles, it could be from authoritative
As,
sources and
as
experts,
reported. Yep.
and then you feed that in and you say, okay, I want to write a piece on this, or have a piece on this. We need to summarize it. Now AI is great at kind of outlining. So it's first
Bingo.
we're going to make an outline, and then you go, okay, using the information I provided, let's work this section by section, and then it comes up with a draft, and you have to not just its grammar, its spelling, its syntax is going to be great. It's going to be the human's responsibility to make sure that the information is accurate and matches the information it was given.
Yeah.
So the humans are going to have to be involved at multiple stages. They're going to have to gather and validate the information. They're going to have to work with AI to come up with an outline.
Hmm.
AI is going to help them write the story based on that guidance, and then humans still going to have to sign off on the accuracy. It could still
First
take a
human
lot of the work out
being
of it.
is going to be me and Tom telling the news, right? If
Well,
we're
yes.
using
Yeah.
Rockland News as the example, because here we are right in the middle of it, and we want to tell the most accurate news, non-biased.
Yeah.
I, I
That's basically
you
what
know,
we're going for. I mean, in all seriousness. And the nice thing is that I get to treat it like a business. That it's if we do a good job, then it's going to be good business. I mean, we literally have 21 advertisers that signed up
hold on,
since last
but
Wednesday.
our best product is the listeners out there being informed.
Yes.
We want you all who are listening here
Right.
to be informed, the most accurate, and that's where I'm getting at as I am fearful of this tool, and I want to say to all of our listeners that
Yes.
you and I are going to commit to using this tool in the best, most wholesome way possible to get us the most accurate information.
And Dave, I guess some parting thoughts. And you mentioned several ways of being able to train and guide AI in a better direction. Certainly providing it some information at the beginning, telling the AI exactly what you want it to do. And are there any thoughts that you have about limiting AI's scope because it's a big database? Are there any ways of telling it what not to look for? In other words,
You can. It's a little challenging in a way. It's like me telling you not to think about a purple elephant, and
yeah,
the moment I
yeah,
mentioned it, it's and now the next thing AI. One thing I can't stand is that when the developers train AI, they like to put in, I guess, catchphrases or whatever in the process called fine tuning, where they actually tune it to be a helpful assistant or give it like examples of what it's supposed to do.
right,
And sometimes, if you ever notice, like recently, ChatGPT throws in a bunch of M dashes, or it uses scaffolding and nuance in certain terms over and over and over, and that's because it's shown this in the fine tuning data, and now it's like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to use this all the time. So
right.
yeah, you want a limited scope, but you do that by carefully presenting it the information you want it to work with, not so much of telling it not what to work with.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Dave Ziegler, and I'm going to give the websites as well. Ziegler Technical Solutions LLC. That's Ziegler.us. That's Ziegler.us/home. You just go to Ziegler.us. It'll take you there.
Now, Tom,
But more, well, let me get
after our show is done, you're going to post all of these links.
Yes.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Thank
That's
you.
what- that's
All
what
right.
I
See,
wanted to
and
know.
this is the other part with Mike, and again, Mike Kluger is co-hosting today. He's guest co-host, but we're going to talk after the show because this rocks. But you know that's part of why I need a co-host, man. Like I need it. You
Finish
know?
reading Dave's information. It will also be in post.
Yes.
He will make it so you guys can go listen to the show again, click on the links. But Tom, keep reading.
Okay.
Because we got to promote Dave.
AIGHTBITS.com. That's itebits.com. And we're also going to have the recap of this episode at amrockland.com. So Dave Ziegler, thank you for being on the Rockland News show today. You're like one of our inaugural live stream guests. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Tom, and Mike. I appreciate you both.
Awesome. We'll talk a little bit after the show. And for those of you that want to check out all the news that matters to you most, head over to rocklandnews.com.
That's rocklandnews.com.
Yes, it is. And so our publication, we publish about 30 stories a week on a variety of matters across Rockland County that matter most to you. This podcast is also available at www.rocklandsound. You can catch all of the Apple podcasts that we've been doing for the many, many years, literally 5 years of stuff on there. Check it out. And we're looking forward to having a lot of interaction in the future. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dave, for being on the show, and we'll see you next time.
Hold on, Tom. I got one more question. I got one more question.
I was so smooth with that.
I got one more
Damn
question.
it. What?
How can our fans reach out to us?
News@rocklandnews.com. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.